It's interesting to note that devices cannot handle being exposed, which is why they murdered 76 mental patients between the years of 1989 and 2001. 76 mental patients who had been part of Project Aniseed, i.e., they were schizophrenic super-spies who had been manipulated and hypno-programmed in the Roundway experiment, and they were attempting to expose the Roundway experiment and stumbled upon the truth about the whole town of devices, that it is a satanic, child-raping, or organ harvesting network. And therefore the 49 elders of devices, plus one Aplin family patriarch, who at the time would have been Patrick Aplin, decreed that these 76 mental patients must be killed by the devices residents to protect the reputation of the market town of devices. So it's all very interesting to consider, and really quite awful the lengths that the devices residents are prepared to go to stop mental patients from exposing their town. Indeed, the residents of devices decreed that I must die because I exposed the fact that Alex Day is a rapist. So it's all very interesting to consider the fact that they decreed my death merely for stating that Alex Day is a rapist, which he is. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed. Returning to the Roundway experiment, as I stated before, the Roundway experiment began in devices in 1947 and was basically created by a network of British intelligence operatives, Office of Strategic Services, United States intelligence operatives, and Nazi intelligence agents, i.e., networks of intelligence operatives, programmers, and psychiatrists who had been transferred from the Nazi concentration camp system and the T4, Tiergartenstrasse 4 psychiatric project to devices under the auspices of the National Association for Mental Health, which itself was formed by a network of British psychiatrists and Nazi psychiatrists operating in tandem together for eugenicist aims and ambitions. So it's all very interesting to consider the fact that the Roundway experiment was begun, overseen by the National Association for Mental Health. And indeed, Project Aniseed began as soon as the Mindgate program became operative, i.e. 1947. Indeed, Project Aniseed was sworn in by edict by the Director General of MI6 at the time. And indeed, it's all very interesting to note that the experimentation of schizophrenics began at the Roundway Asylum facility in 1947 in a location known as the Cloakroom, which was on the edge of the Roundway Asylum site. And indeed, the Cloakroom today still stands and is hidden from public passers-by. And indeed, the Cloakroom leads to the catacombs. And indeed, the catacombs these days are filled with Russian mental patients as part of this scheme operated by the British intelligence services in tandem with the Chechen mob in the Russian Federation, whereby the Chechen mob kidnap psychic spies, i.e. Russian mental patients, from secret psychiatric facilities across Russia, transport them to Vladivostok, and then they are taken in containers by ship to the Barnstable region and eventually transferred to devices, where they are utilized as part of a psychic warfare program by the British intelligence services. And once they are deemed surplus to requirements, their organs are harvested after being ritually slaughtered by the butchers of Walter Rose and Sons butcher shop. And their meat is sold as pork in Walter Rose and Sons butcher shop, and their organs are distributed on the dark web by a network of Romanian mobsters operating out of Swindon. Indeed, the majority of clients for these organs are, interestingly, Russian elites. So it's interesting how this all works out. Indeed, the British intelligence services have a large scheme going with the Chechen mob. which also interconnects with the Gladio program. Indeed, Chechen jihadists are utilized as part of a Western cryptocratic Gladio network attempting to destabilize the Russian Federation as much as possible in light of the current Cold War conflict. So it's interesting to consider the Chechen jihadists are effectively a modern equivalent of the Afghan Mujahideen, utilized by MI6 and the CIA for operative purposes. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed. I was condemned by fatwa by the leader of the Chechens, Ramzan Kadyrov, in 2013 after I murdered 2 Chechens who were paramilitaries for Nazi elements within British intelligence. Indeed, they were causing me trouble, so I stabbed them with a screwdriver on a bridge in Vladikavkaz and was subsequently sentenced to involuntary commitment in a Russian mental hospital, which I escaped from after a month. Indeed, during this month, I believe I underwent some sort of mind control programming. Indeed, there were mind control experiments being operated by the GRU at this facility in Voronezh. And indeed, it is even possible that I am not William Field from Calne at all, that I am actually an escaped Russian mental patient and technically an imposter. Indeed, I have not come to a complete theory on this because I believe I have severe amnesia. Indeed, this would mean that I was not actually at Grenville Lodge at all. However, I have some memories of Grenville Lodge which may not actually be the correct ones. However, it is certainly a true case that Grenville Lodge is involved in the things that I have basically delineated. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed. It is highly likely that I am not William Field from Calne at all, and that I am actually a Russian mental patient from a Voronezh psychiatric facility who escaped, made his way to Serbia, and replaced William Field from Calne, which is all very interesting to consider indeed. We do look very alike, but you can tell us apart by our eyes. Indeed, I have more Russian-y eyes than him, so it's all very interesting to consider indeed. I believe I may actually be from somewhere in the deepest parts of Siberia, somewhere near Novokuznetsk. So it's all very interesting to consider, and indeed, we are going to operate with that baseline now that I am not actually William Field from Calne at all. Indeed, it's all very interesting to consider that I was a victim of GRU mind control experimentation during my days in a Russian mental facility, psychiatric facility. Indeed, having turned up in the United Kingdom as William Field, I was placed in the Roundway experiment, designated TF-84. It's interesting to consider that during my initial incarceration in the Green Lane Psychiatric Facility in 2017, Dr. Peter Cohen, the head shrink of this facility, who is himself an ardent Zionist, an operative of the Mossad, believed that I was a Russian, and therefore treated me accordingly because he believed I was a Russian. Indeed, Dr. Peter Crofts, who is an operative of a Fourth Reich intelligence agency and is another of the main shrinks of Green Lane Psychiatric Hospital, also believed I was of Russian heritage. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed. I stated before that there is a Cold War hive mind in Wiltshire due to the current political situation and the fact that the Wiltshire population are lagging behind and believe that we are still undergoing the Cold War years. The British propaganda does not help this situation, but the Wiltshire population are scared of anything remotely Russian at all. Indeed, I have stated many times that I have no connections at all with the Russian intelligence services, apart from having been mind controlled by them. Indeed, I despise the Russian state. I despise the Russian government, and I despise Putin's boys. So it's very interesting to note. Indeed, I have been irradiated by the Russian intelligence services over the years also. as well as having been irradiated by Devices police. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed. It's even possible that the technology that the Devices police operatives are using on me is Soviet patented technology. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed. There are rumors that there is an organized crime boss of Turkish heritage who is involved in my targeting. And indeed, he is an operative of Grey Wolves connected Gladio outfits. And he believes I am a Russian also. So it's interesting to consider indeed. It's all very strange to consider. But as I have stated, I have no ties to Russian intelligence operations and no ties at all to the Russian state. Indeed, it may just be the case that I am an escapee from a foreign edge psychiatric facility who made my way to Serbia and replaced William Field from Calm. So it's all very interesting to note that this may simply be the situation, and that would mean that I was never actually at Grenville Lodge. However, I do have memories of someone, most probably therefore the Paracelsius group, killing two of my girlfriends, Katty and Mishki. Indeed, this may not have actually happened at Grenville Lodge. This may have happened in Vladikavkaz, as the Paracelsius group of British Freemasons have influences and interests in southwestern Russia and the Caucasus. So it's all very interesting to consider that fact that the Paracelsius group are running a lot of the organized criminal operations there as part of the network, in inverted commas, i.e. this Masonic intelligence organization that runs a lot of the cartels in Eastern Europe, as well as the maniac murder cult, who are die-hard enemies of Russian mental patients. So it's interesting to consider our intelligence networks are always operating at loggerheads with the maniac murder cult, who we know are basically a pet project of the British police via the Paracelsius group, which is a key Masonic network which controls the cartels in Romania, Moldova, Ukraine, and southwestern Russia. Indeed, it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, one of the key habitats of the maniac murder cult is Rostov-on-the-Don, which is a Paracelsius group headquarters. Indeed, it's all very interesting to consider how all of this interlinks and how all of the clues lead us back to the British police and such cells as Devices police, who are operating cartel operations of their own in Romania, Moldova, eastern Ukraine, and southwestern Russia. So it's all very interesting to note. Indeed, Russian mental patients are a very special breed of people, and this is why British intelligence are always attempting to kidnap Russian mental patients, whether that is off the streets of Nizhny Novgorod or from a secret psychiatric facility somewhere in Siberia. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, there was recently a Russian mental patient kidnapped off the streets of Nizhny Novgorod by Chechen bandits who were operating as contractors for the Paracelsius group. Indeed, this Russian mental patient was brought by container ship to the Barnstable region and then transferred to a secure location, i.e. a black site in Wiltshire, and forced to operate as a psychic spy for the British Crown. So it's all very interesting to note. As I stated, Russian mental patients are commodities on the international espionage market and are sold at auctions via bidding mechanisms to the highest bidder, whether that be the Iranian intelligence agency or such private networks as the Archimedes Group, i.e. an Israeli private security contractor and private intelligence service. So it's interesting to consider there are Russian mental patient psychic spies operative for many networks, and indeed, I was myself operative for British intelligence as a Gladio 4 operative, operating as a Nazi spy for the British intelligence services. Indeed, to be a Nazi spy is inimical to me as a mental patient, as the Third Reich murdered 93% of paranoid schizophrenics within its borders during the years precluding and including the Second World War. So it's all very interesting to note. Indeed, as I've stated before, the Second World War was a charade, as the German military intelligence services, i.e. the Abwehr, had control of Britain since 1926, what with Britain actually technically losing the intelligence war during the First World War. And indeed, you have to consider the fact that German intelligence had a lot to do with the conquest of Russia by the Bolsheviks. Indeed, it's all very interesting to consider this truth. Indeed, it's all very strange what is going on. And indeed, schizophrenic super spies of British and Russian origin are in danger from the Nazi networks at all times, because the Nazi networks operate on a eugenicist ideal and do not trust having schizophrenics within the intelligence services of the United Kingdom, the United States, or the Russian Federation. So it's interesting to consider the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst themselves do not employ schizophrenic super spies, as they are very arrogant people, despite the fact that they know that schizophrenics have high intelligence value and high intelligence potential. They themselves do not train schizophrenic super spies. They simply exterminate schizophrenics in gas chambers, utilizing such networks as the cemetery network and the maniac murder cult. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed. The maniac murder cult is one of the most important black projects of the British intelligence services and the British police via the Paracelsius group in Romania, Moldova, Ukraine, Russia, and Georgia. So it's interesting to consider what is going on with the British police basically operating this network as a subsection of their organ harvesting branch. Indeed, maniac murder cult harvest organs of mental patients for the black market, which is itself run by British police operatives. Indeed, as we have seen with the case of Devizes, this is a British police organ harvesting operation, which itself has ritualistic and occult overtones, as all the operatives involved are connected to Masonic lodges. So it's all very, very interesting to note. Indeed, Moonraker Lodge number 8747 of Devizes is attempting to organize a hitman to dispose of me. Indeed, they are attempting to recruit a Georgian hitman called Ruslan Kordiashvili, who is himself an operative of the maniac murder cult. So it's interesting. Ruslan had a reputation in Georgia at the time I was in Vladikavkaz for raping female mental patients. And indeed, he was the target of mine at the time. However, I didn't actually venture to Georgia. And indeed, he is currently operative out of Vladikavkaz, interestingly, where he is continuing those behaviors. So it's all very interesting. Ruslan was a target of mine when I was a hitman, i.e. a trigger man, although my trigger was a screwdriver. So it's all very interesting to consider how things are coming full circle, and I am now a target of Ruslan's. However, he is operating on a contract from Moonraker Lodge number 8747 to exterminate me for the British police. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed. There are so many contractual tie-ins between Moonraker Lodge number 8747 and elements of the Georgian mafia. So it's interesting to consider this would be the Kutaisi mob, which interestingly ruled the Soviet Union during the Stalin years. Indeed, an organized crime entity from Kutaisi ran the Soviet Union during the Stalin years. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed. The GIU hated the Kutaisi mob during the Stalin years. So it's all very interesting to note this complex and indeed the factional nature of Russian politics. And indeed, the intelligence services of the Russian Federation are so factional, even within agencies, that it's all very interesting to consider indeed. There are networks of Russian intelligence that enjoy the activities of schizophrenic super-spies because they find them highly intelligent and highly capable in intelligence affairs. However, there are other networks, especially neo-Nazi continuums and racist continuums within the Russian intelligence services that absolutely despise the schizophrenic super-spies. So it's all very interesting to consider. Indeed, Ruslan Kordiashvili does operate at times for the FSB. So it's interesting to consider indeed. The FSB actually have a warrant for my arrest if I ever step foot in the Russian Federation. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed. I would be committed involuntarily to a mental hospital to serve out my sentence if I return to the Russian Federation. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed. Because no one can prove that I am not William Field from Caen, I can continue to operate on his British passport. So it's all very interesting to consider. And indeed, or there being a lack of extradition between the United Kingdom and the Russian Federation, I believe I am actually safe as houses here. So it's all very interesting to note. However, I continue to operate for a Russian mental patient intelligence network. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed. We are open to British schizophrenic super spies involvement in our networks, though. So it's interesting to consider this is not a nationalist entity at all. This is a mental patient collective. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed. My original exposures to the Dommek cult were due to a certain network of Russian mental patients able to transmit information into my brain, as my exposure of the Jesuits was causing problems because the Zionists were catching up with my theories and trick switching them. So while I was solely focusing on the Jesuits, the Zionist intelligence services were able to almost catch up with me. Therefore, Russian mental patients put information into my head that I should expose the Dommek cult. And therefore I began to expose the Dommek cult. It's interesting to consider that when somebody exposes the Dommek cult, especially with their face on camera, they begin to attract attention from chief Zionist entities. And these Zionist entities begin to employ sorcerers to infest the brain of the conspiracy theorist with demons. So it's interesting to consider that after I began to expose the Dommek cult with my face on camera, everything started going funny. Indeed, I experienced a lot of interference in my brain and in day-to-day life. So it's all very interesting to consider indeed. Moonraker Lodge number 8747 have connections to the Jericho group. So it's all very interesting to consider that the Masonic sorcerers of the Moonraker Lodge number 8747 were operative attempting to destroy me also. just as they killed 76 mental patients between the years 1989 and 2001 who were threatening to expose the operations of the Roundway Asylum experiment and Devizes police and the Devizes residents. So it's all very interesting how this has worked out, really. It's all very strange to consider and really quite disturbing indeed. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there now. Thank you.